The last door of Andrew. When the voice came, it did not come as thunder. Thunder could be mistaken for weather. It could be explained away by old men staring at a dark horizon, by mothers gathering laundry from the lines, by children pointing with delight at the sky. Thunder belonged to the ordinary terrors of the world. This voice did not. It came into the bones of Andrew while he stood alone beside the half-built hull that had consumed his years. It entered him like iron driven into green wood, splitting him from heart to marrow, and he knew before a single word was spoken that whatever remained of his life would not belong to him. To the vessel, you and all your house. In this generation of blood and mockery, I have found you alone to walk blameless before me. Take with you 7 pairs of every clean beast, male and female, and 2 of every unclean thing, male and female. Also 7 pairs of the birds of the sky, that their seed may remain upon the earth. For after 7 days I will send rain upon the land 40 days and 40 nights, and every breathing thing I have made will be cut off from the face of the world. Andrew fell to his knees in the mud, though there had been no rain for months. His hands shook against the ground. The timbers of the vessel loomed beside him, black with pitch, vast as a cliff, ugly as a wound. He had built it under the laughter of men. He had built it under the curses of merchants who said he had ruined the forest. He had built it while boys climbed the scaffolding and spat down at him. He had built it while women whispered that madness had finally ripened in him like rot in fruit. Yet now, at the end, the command was worse than the ridicule. Build had been a burden. Enter was a sentence. Andrew rose before evening and called his household to him. His wife, Juliet, came first, wiping flour from her hands, her face pale from years of unspoken dread. Then came his sons, Tovin, broad-shouldered and stern, Malek, whose eyes were quick and wounded, and Joram, the youngest, whose silence had grown deeper with every plank driven into the great hull. Behind them came their wives, Tirzah, who was heavy with patience, Elian, whose grief always seemed on the verge of speech, and Neria, barely a woman still, with a gaze too tender for what was coming. They stood beneath the vessel's shadow, and none of them smiled. "It is 7 days," Andrew said. No one asked what he meant. Juliet closed her eyes. Tovin looked toward the city in the distance, where thin smoke rose from cookfires and evening songs. "Then it is true." "It was always true," Andrew answered, and hated himself for the hardness of his voice. Malek laughed once, but there was no mirth in it. "And now what? We gather beasts and watch the world die." Andrew had no answer to that, though he had prayed for one through many sleepless years. In the days that followed, the animals came. That was the first terror. No traps were laid, no men were sent into the hills, no bait was hung at the forest edge. They came of their own accord, walking as though summoned by a music too deep for human hearing. Deer stepped beside wolves without trembling. Ravens settled in ranks upon the beams. Serpents coiled in baskets as if sleep had been poured into them. Oxen arrived with steaming breath. Goats, sheep, lions, hares, foxes, eagles, doves. Creatures clean and unclean, gentle and violent, winged and creeping, beautiful and hideous, all gathering in a silence that turned the laughter of the city brittle. People came to see it. At first they came laughing, as they always had. They climbed the nearby ridge with wineskins and fruit. They brought children onto their shoulders. They pointed at the procession of beasts and called it a circus of old age. But as the hours lengthened and the animals kept coming, laughter died in throats. A woman Andrew knew from childhood stood at the edge of the crowd, clutching her little girl. "What have you done?" she whispered. He recognized her then, Myra, daughter of the potter. He remembered stealing figs with her when they were children, before years and marriages and Grav had divided their lives. "I did nothing," he said. Her child stared at the great vessel with solemn eyes. "Mother, are we going too?" Myra did not answer. That night, after the crowd had gone, Joram found Andrew sitting by the ramp with his face in his hands. "Father," Joram said softly, "I saw Uncle Dagon today." Andrew looked up. Joram hesitated. He was among the crowd. He asked me if there was room. Andrew felt something in his chest give way like rotten cord. Dagon was Juliet's brother, a mason with a broken nose and a laugh like a barking dog. He had once carried Tovin on his shoulders through harvest fields. He had buried Malek's firstborn when fever took the child in winter. He had never once believed Andrew's warnings, but he had never mocked them either. He had simply gone on living, as all men do when tomorrow feels guaranteed. "What did you tell him?" Andrew asked. Joram's voice faltered. "I said the vessel was built by command, and only those named could enter." Andrew shut his eyes. "Did I answer rightly?" Joram whispered. "There are questions so cruel that even truth seems like treachery." "Yes," Andrew said at last. But the word felt like blood in his mouth. On the seventh day the sky changed. Not with clouds at first, but with absence. The light itself seemed to dim, as though the heavens had drawn a veil over their own face. The air grew heavy. Birds stopped singing. Dogs in the city howled until people threw stones to silence them. Andrew's household moved the last stores into the vessel. Grain, dried fruit, jars of water, herbs, oil, tools, bedding, ropes, lamps. The animals shifted and muttered in their enclosures. Hooves scraped wood. Wings beat the stale air. The pitch walls sweated in the heat. Juliet walked once through the chambers, touching everything as though committing it to memory. The rough planks, the hanging lanterns, the baskets of seed. The bed she had arranged with hands that should have been making supper in an ordinary house. When she returned to Andrew, her face had the look of someone who has already begun mourning. "Outside," she said, "they are gathering." He knew who she meant. From the opening of the vessel they saw them, not a crowd of mockers now, but neighbors, families, old companions, the potter and his daughter, shepherds, merchants, children with dust on their feet. Dagon, people Andrew had known all his life, standing below the hull and staring upward like the condemned before a wall. No one shouted. That was the worst of it. At last Dagon stepped forward. His voice rose clear in the stillness. "Andrew," he called, "if this thing is of God, then plead for us." Andrew gripped the railing until splinters pierced his skin. "I have pleaded," he said. Dagon spread his hands. "Then plead again." There was a murmur among the people, not angry, not yet, but desperate. Myra clutched her daughter. An old man fell to his knees. Someone began to weep openly. Malek turned away with a curse. Tovin stood rigid, his jaw trembling. Joram covered his face. Juliet descended the steps of the vessel before anyone could stop her. She went halfway down the ramp and stood where all could see her. "My brother," she said to Dagon, and her voice broke on the word. "If I could tear open these walls with my hands, I would. If I could break heaven itself, I would. But I am not mistress of this judgment." Dagon stared at her, and in his face, Andrew saw the dawning knowledge that hope had ended. Neria, young Neria, suddenly cried out, "Take my place." All turned toward her. Her cheeks were wet. "Take my place," she said again, looking at the people below. "I have no child. I have lived the least. Let one of them come instead." Joram seized her shoulders, horrified. Tirzah began to sob silently. Even the animals seemed hushed.